when I ponder the absurdities and the destructive absurdities of critical race theory, the whole notion that sort of the way to help African Americans as a group to advance is to pull every other group down. Hey, let's stop all the advanced courses. Let's stop teaching people calculus. It's almost like you want to hide Black disadvantage by making everybody else fall behind also. I mean, what a pathetic, disgusting thing to do. And I think to myself, what's the solution to all this? How can we find a recipe for success? Not just Black success, but success in general, by looking to someone inside the African American tradition. And fortunately, there is such a man. I would call him the second greatest African American of our history. Now, who's the greatest? Some people may say, well, it's obviously Martin Luther King. No, it's not Martin Luther King. And by the way, it's not Rosa Parks. Let me move from seat number 12 to seat number 4. No, it's Frederick Douglass. He was the greatest. Runaway slave, champion of abolitionism, later a diplomat, by the way, a Republican. And but who was the second greatest Black American? I give that title to Booker T. Washington. I would put Martin Luther King probably in the third rank. Now, interestingly, I encountered Booker T. Washington when I was in India. One of the very few books about race or about American Blacks that I read before I came to America. And in a way, I didn't even read it as a book about race at all. I read it as a book about somebody starting at the very bottom of the heap, the bottom of the ladder, you might say, who made his way up. And the book, of course, is called Up from Slavery, one of the great books of American history. By the way, suppressed by the left. And by suppressed, I mean they deride Booker T. Washington because he doesn't represent their kind of philosophy. By the way, they're not too excited about Frederick Douglass either. In one of the Antifa raids, they knocked down a Frederick Douglass statue in upstate New York. I want to talk on this podcast about the great debate between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, a debate that sort of encapsulates the two roads, the fork in the road, the choices available to Blacks and really to any group in trying to get ahead in life. But I figured that before I even do that, I'm going to sort of save that, perhaps for next week, and just begin with an introduction to Booker T. Washington's great book, because I want to give you a feel for the tone of it, what it sounds like, and why it had such a powerful emotional impact on me. I mean, there were 2 or 3 times I literally sort of was in tears reading this book in my teenage years. So I'm going to begin at the very beginning. I'm now quoting Washington. I was born a slave on a plantation in Franklin County, Virginia. I'm not quite sure of the exact place or exact date of my birth, but at any rate I suspect I must have been born somewhere and at some time. Wow. Right away we get to the nature of slavery. You don't even know your own birthday. And then a little later, Booker T. Washington says that, now as a grown man, and in fact as a well-known figure, a public figure, people will often ask him, when you were a kid, what kind of games did you like to play? And here's Booker T. Washington. He goes, until that question was asked, it never occurred to me there was no period of my life that was devoted to play. From the time I can remember anything, every day of my life has been occupied in some kind of labor. He talks about cleaning the yards, carrying water to the men in the fields, going to the mill, taking the corn to be ground. The mill was 3 miles from the plantation, so this is slavery. Now, when Washington talks about emancipation, which, by the way, came when he was a kid, you might think that he would go into sort of full victimology mode, Nikole Hannah-Jones mode. Woe is me! And he would have a lot more than Nikole Hannah-Jones to complain about. But here's what he says, which is a very interesting pivot. He goes, labor was something that both races on the plantation sought to escape. Very interesting observation. He goes, my old master had many boys and girls, meaning many children of his own, but not one, as far as I know, ever mastered a single trade or special line of productive industry. The slave owner class, what did they learn to do? Nothing. The girls were not taught to cook, sew, or take care of the house. All of this was left to the slaves, and that's the key. The slaves did all the work, which leads Booker T. Washington to kind of a surprising conclusion. Quote, when freedom came, the slaves were almost as well fitted to begin life anew as the master. Why? Because the slave owner and his sons had mastered no industry. On the other hand, the slaves in many cases had mastered handicrafts, and none were ashamed and few unwilling to labor. The slaves were used to working, and they were good at doing stuff. They were masons and tinkers and builders and farmers, so they knew actually how to get by and how to build their lives after slavery. And this book goes on to talk about how Washington developed his philosophy of you have to go from one step to the other. He says, quote, I have learned that success is to be measured not so much by the position that one has reached in life, as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed. In other words, your success in life is not measured by where you started, and it's not even measured by where you end up. It's measured by the distance traveled in between. A very good measure to keep in mind as we look to people. What have they accomplished given where they started? Then says Washington, and I think this is also the key to his philosophy, I've never had much patience with the multitudes of people who are always ready to explain why one cannot succeed. Think of critical race theory. This is it in a nutshell. Let's provide elaborate explanations for why the people who are doing nothing with their life can't do anything with their life, why they are made to be in this position, why society is to blame, and since society is to blame, nobody can lift them up but society. In other words, these are passive people who are not expected to be agents of their own life. I mean, what soul-crushing, terrifying advice to give to someone, basically saying you're inert. Somebody else is responsible for your advancement, and yet this is the recipe of the Democratic Party. It's not Booker T. Washington's recipe. He goes, quote, I have always had a high regard for the man who could tell me how to succeed. How to succeed. And that, it seems to me, is a summary of what conservatism needs to be. It needs to provide to all Americans a very clear picture of where the ladders of success are and how people can climb them. And I think if we do that, this is a winning formula going forward. Now, when Booker T. Washington starts his school, an industrial school called the Tuskegee School, he describes a woman who came to him, and she was, I'm not quoting him, she was clad in rags, but they were clean. And she says to him, I'm not quoting, and I'm going to actually use the language from the text itself. She says, Mr. Washington, God knows I spent the best days of my life in slavery. God knows I was ignorant and poor, but I know that you and Miss Davidson I know what you and Miss Davidson is trying to do. I knows you is trying to make better men and better women for the colored race. I ain't got no money, but I wants you to take these 6 eggs. These 6 eggs. What I's been saving up, and I wants you to put these 6 eggs into the education of these boys and gals. Wow. And here's Booker T. Washington. Since the work at Tuskegee started, it's been my privilege to receive many gifts for the benefit of the institution. By the way, he gets huge grants later from Andrew Carnegie and other philanthropists, but he goes, but never any, I think, that touched me so deeply as this one. This is the biblical story of the widow's mite. And Booker T. Washington, you can see here the courage and the humanity of this man. Now, I'll close this section by with Booker T. Washington getting an honorary degree at Harvard. Finally, his achievement was recognized, and Harvard sends him a letter saying, you're the first black man to get an honorary degree from any Northeastern institution. And Booker T. Washington, it kind of hits him. You know, he's sitting back and he goes, as I sat upon my veranda with this letter in my hand, tears came into my eyes. My whole former life, my life as a slave on the plantation, my work in the coal mine, the times I was without food and clothing when I made my bed under the sidewalk, my struggles for education, the trying days at Tuskegee, days when I didn't know where to turn for $1, the ostracism and oppression on behalf of my race, all of this passed before me and nearly overcame me. So here's a man who has literally come, to use the title of his book, Up from Slavery. And he speaks with a kind of clarity and moral authority and decency that I think elevates him into a class of his own. Later, he got into a sort of ferocious debate, which I'll talk about, with another prominent Black American, another great man, W.E.B. Du Bois, a Northerner, a free man, different than the Southern Booker T. Washington. But I think at the end of the day, you'll see that it was Washington who came out ahead, even in that debate. Here is a man who represents that fork in the road, almost the road not taken. The critical race theorists, the leftists all want to take blacks down a path that I think in the end leads to isolation, leads to division, and leads as a group to ossification, to being stuck where you are. Booker T. Washington shows the way not only forward, but the way upward. And it is to him that we need to turn to figure out not just how blacks, but many others can write, you may say, the charter of their own Emancipation Proclamation.